It's safe to say some factions for our tabletop games get a lot more love than others, whether it's big multi-million-dollar companies or small studios pumping out STL files. Some miniature lines just get left behind. I play a lot of Grimdark Future on Tabletop Simulator, a wargame from One-Page Rules. Okay, let's go.
If you make more than half of these, I'm multi-flooring scared. Fuck off!
And I've had so much fun running Jester Elves that I've hunted high and low for models, but despite my best efforts, I've never been able to find suitable minis for this faction. There have been some that have definitely come close, minis that look cool and fit the bill, however have been kinda limited in terms of poses and customization. I actually even considered picking up GW's kit. Blasphemy, I know, but 6 models for $65 isn't exactly tempting. So when I saw the previews for the Void Jesters by Surrogate Miniatures touting a whopping 130 bits, I was immediately excited and signed up for the Patreon. But have Surrogate Miniatures done a good job? Are these files worthy of your hard-earned hobby dollars? What kind of value is Surrogate Miniatures bringing to the table? Let's find out. The price at the door is $14 Australian, and right off the bat when you sign up, you get access to a community Discord server, a welcome pack with a cool collection of minis, including some vehicles. I particularly like this buggy looking thing, so I may have to print one of those off at some point. There's a 50% discount code for the My Mini Factory store, so you can pick up earlier releases at a good price. I actually took advantage of that to grab this bad boy here. More on that later. And speaking of My Mini Factory, Surrogate Miniatures has integration with it, and so Patreon rewards are distributed there, where you'll have access to them year-round through your account library. So that's really good. I'm a big fan of all this, but rarely is anything perfect, and the first hurdle I ran into was that despite the files for the Void Jesters becoming available via a Google Drive link on July 17th, the pre-supported files wouldn't be ready until the very end of July. Now, Surrogate Miniatures did mention that he had someone new doing the pre-supported files and that he suffered a setback due to illness, so I can't be too hard on him here. Sometimes life happens and things go wrong, and I hope he's doing better now. But in any case, I did find this a little frustrating because I wanted to get started on this video and my own Space Clown army ASAP. So with the pre-supported files finally available, I downloaded them to my PC and started having a look. The first things I noticed are that all the files are just dumped into the one folder rather than being sorted into subdirectories for unsupported and pre-supported files. A small inconvenience if you care about that sort of thing, but nothing too egregious. There's no inclusion of any renders. Again, not a big deal, but renders are nice to have for file management and knowing what's in a folder at a glance. Now this is kind of a big one in my opinion. The pre-supported files appear to have been done with Lychee Slicer, which is fine. However, there's no inclusion of the LYS files, and that kinda sucks. LYS files are way more versatile and useful to have than pre-baked supports in STL files. For example, rescaling with LYS files is super convenient, and if you use Lychee Slicer and intend to print a lot of bits, the auto-arrange feature is amazing when using LYS files because it will overlap the rafts, making it super quick and easy to sort your parts into manageable chunks for post-processing, as well as maximizing your build volume. However, for STL files, it will not do that, and instead space them apart so the rafts don't touch, meaning you now have to spend a bunch of time manually positioning each model to get the most out of your build volume and those post-processing benefits. Lastly, LYS files are just great to have because if for whatever reason you need to modify the supports, you easily can. I did reach out to Surrogate Miniatures to see if they could provide those files, but unfortunately I never got a response. Taking a closer look at the pre-supported files, I sliced a bunch and brought them into UV Tools, and while it looks like whoever supported these minis did a reasonably good job, I did still find a whole bunch of unsupported islands in this print, and that's just never a good sign, especially for paid files. Pre-supported files at the end of the day are what we are paying for, because who the hell wants to support minis themselves? It's mind-numbing work, takes forever, and when not done well, it's potentially damaging to people's printers if they're not careful. If you're curious how, check out my video on the most critical aspects for supporting minis where I go into detail on this topic. So other than the build plate being slightly out of level and my concerns for the unsupported islands, my first print went great. The VAT passed the finger test. Removal of the parts from the supports was easy enough and they came away with minimal scarring, which is always great to see. Although I definitely lost a head or two in the cleaning solution just from swishing them around in there. so perhaps the heads would have benefited from 1 or 2 slightly beefier supports. One problem I did have is some of the blades appear to be extremely fragile, right where the hilt meets the guard, and so I broke more than a couple at different stages of this whole process. This might not be a problem for everyone, particularly those of you mixing flexible resins into your prints. However, I know most of us are just using stock standard cheapo resins, and while they're completely fine, just be wary and take extra care when handling these minis, because those blades will not tolerate your abuse or clumsiness. So I re-leveled my bed. Well, actually there was a bit more to it than that. I'm gonna have to make a video about Anycubic quality control one of these days, I think. Anyway, so I ran a second print of extra arms and heads to make up for my lost and damaged bits from the first print, and I'm happy to say this also printed really well and gave me everything I needed to start assembling and painting up these minis. Fun side note, I mixed 3 different types of super glue on a whim, and the end result is somehow incredible. This stuff grabs in seconds, and the bond seems stronger and more durable than I'm used to. Don't know what's up with that, but hey, if you live in Australia and you're struggling with your superglue as well, maybe give this a go. I don't know about ratios, just wing it. So this kit gives you 14 torso and leg poses, which are singular parts, 18 heads, and a whole shitload of arms with different weapons, and I think that's more than enough to create a good deal of variety to these minis when assembling them. Having said that though, I do hope to see this kit expanded on in the future with more torso and leg options. That would be really cool. The arms come in both female and male varieties, but I found it kinda tricky to tell them apart when I was assembling these, so I may have ended up with some girls with boy arms and vice versa, but honestly I don't think it matters. These minis went together well, and to me, look pretty good. The one thing I'm worried about is if I go in there and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll have this please, and they say that's $170. And it creates that awkward, oh, but it's on your website for 140 conversation. Which
I think the one thing is to be like, you go in there and you're like, oh, can I grab a Army Painter Speed Paint Mega Pack or whatever the fuck it's called?
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't have any in stock.
Oh god, yeah. No, that sucks. I feel like it's been months since I've painted any minis, and for these models, I really wanted to sink my teeth into it. But if you know me, then you know I prefer painting stuff fast than painting it particularly well. And any technique that minimizes time and maximizes results is invaluable to a lazy painter like me. So I thought I'd treat myself to a new hobby tool, Army Painter Speedpaints. I found this on sale at a local game store and had to pick it up and give it a try. And after watching a few videos on the stuff, I was really impressed with the results Brent from Goobertown Hobbies got when using these over a dry brushed Zenithal highlight. So I was excited to try the same thing here for these guys. I began by priming them in black and then giving each a heavy dry brush of white. This effect alone looks really cool, and I think I might actually prefer this rough and scruffy look to that perfectly smooth Zenithal highlight you get from an airbrush. It's one I'll definitely keep experimenting with, because the less I need the airbrush, the better. That thing is a pain in the ass, as much as I love it. At this point, I began picking different speed paints to try and choosing colors I thought would complement each other well. There was only one skin tone in the box, Crusader skin, and I wasn't feeling adventurous enough to try mixing my own just yet, so I used this one for each jester. My process was basically to pick a color and then paint at least one part of each mini in that color, like the hair or a piece of clothing. Some of the prominent colors I ended up using were Fire Giant Orange, Slaughter Red, Magic Blue, Orc Skin, Zealot Yellow, and Purple Alchemy. These last two I thought worked really well with the jesters, and because I'm lazy and didn't want to paint metallics, I just gave Gravelord Grey a go over all the weapons and pieces of armor, and this actually worked out awesome. For the bases, I thought just plain white could look cool, so I gave each a couple of coats of a 50-50 mix of white ink and white paint, and to finish them up, just painted the rims black. Okay, before we take a look at those, this review still ain't done yet. Remember this guy? Inquisitor Grigori. Being a larger multi-part kit, I think it would be a good idea to quickly run through my findings here as well, as there's a couple of things you might like to know about my experience with this model. We have the same lack of file organization as the Void Jesters, and again, no inclusion of any renders, which would have been super useful as putting this guy together was a bit like figuring out a jigsaw puzzle. These files appear to have been pre-supported using Chitubox, and yet there is no inclusion of those Chitubox files, so modifying these supports, if needed, is basically off the table. And modifying they certainly do require. Some parts were insufficiently supported and so resulted in disconnected tips and warped edges, and other parts were maybe a little more difficult to separate from the supports than I would have liked, even after a soak in hot water. Also, I found a bunch of unsupported islands here too, and what the hell is going on with this hollowed piece? Yeah, I decided to just not print that and go with the solid part instead. Also, small thing, but a bunch of these parts were labeled as to mirror, which is just extra work for the end user, and I almost missed it too, which would have been annoying if I printed this off only to find I'm missing a bunch of parts because I didn't go through, find each one that says to mirror, and then duplicate and mirror it. If you're selling files, come on, just make it easy for us. Give us everything we need right there in the can. Also, the majority of these files have small errors that Lychee is throwing glaring warnings at us about, which in my experience are most likely non-issues that could be dealt with quickly using Microsoft's 3D Builder before being distributed to patrons. Because I know people just go ahead and use Lychee's repair function without even giving it a second thought, and I've seen it break pre-supported models on more than one occasion, so just something to be aware of. This seems to be mostly addressed in newer releases, however, as I only found one model throwing an error in the Void Jester kit. But even so, this is stuff I'd like to see fixed in Surrogate Miniatures' back catalogue. Otherwise, the fit for all the joints was good, assembly was rather straightforward once I figured out where everything went, and I'm very happy with the way this model turned out. Okay, so that's that guy. Now let's take a look at these maniac space clowns in all their glory, shall we? Well, I don't know about you, but I think these look freaking sweet. They're definitely a little rough around the edges, sure, but hell, they still look great for the couple of hours of work that went into painting them. I think this Void Jester kit now offers us budget-minded wargamers an excellent choice to build an army or skirmish team for whatever game you play that features a faction like this. And while I unfortunately could not bring you this video during the month of their release, I am, I think, just in time to let you know about August's release, which includes these rather cool looking flyers, which if you signed up for, you could then take the My Mini Factory discount code and pick up the Void Jester kit for half the price, where all told you'd be spending less than the cost of this box, and getting all the files you need to print as many space clowns as you could ever want. Okay, so quick bit of house cleaning before I wrap this one up. If you've seen my previous Patreon reviews, you'll know that I intended to pick them at random due to potential conflict of interest, as I've been pre-supporting minis as a service. So of course the guy who wants to make money pre-supporting minis complains about people's pre-supports. But I'm happy to announce I've decided not to continue doing that for a couple of reasons. Pre-supporting minis and doing it well includes checking it over with UV tools and running test prints. It takes a hell of a lot of time, and the opportunity cost for that is way too high when that's time I could be spending making videos for this channel. And secondly, it's just plain mind-numbing work. I have much more fun preparing these videos than I do pre-supporting minis, and I believe I can provide a lot more value in focusing my effort here instead. So dice gods be damned. If I'm excited about some models, I'm going to buy them and I'm going to review them. Plus, being excited about something really goes a long way in actually doing all this work too. But I won't let that stray me from remaining objective. If your pre-supported files or anything else is shitty, I'm gonna say so. Letting go of that revenue stream though kind of puts me back at square one. So I'm considering starting a Patreon of my own, but I wanted to run that by you first. Some of you tell me you're really enjoying these videos and getting a lot of value from them, and my analytics show a small percentage of you are coming back for each one. So I was thinking I could offer a Discord server where we can chat about all things 3D printing and tabletop, my terrain STLs that I make super infrequently, as well as some behind the scenes stuff, you know, what I'm working on, early video releases and that sort of thing. Knowing some of you would be willing to help me grow this channel would be super helpful in making up my mind on that. So do me a favor, leave a comment and tell me if you'd be interested in a once in a six side Patreon. Thank you very much for watching this one. I hope you found this information useful and enjoyable, and I'll be back soon with another one. Cheers.